everyone, and welcome to the Talk Sense Show. I have today a very special guest. His name is Siddiq Farid, and he's a smart crowd. Please welcome Siddiq to our Talk Sense Show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much for coming on short notice to talk about two different things. First, there has been a new law basically in the UAE regarding joint ownership of real estate. Have you been able to look into it and see what is going on with it?
Yes, I've briefly looked into the announcement that they've been made around the joint ownership.
So one of the things our audience is basically very much interested in is the fact that, does this law mean it would be easier to tokenize real estate as it is? Could we have your point of view, what you see in this upcoming law to be implemented?
Yeah, so I hate to disappoint you and your audience and your fans over here, but my interpretation of this law is quite different from what most people would think when they hear the word joint ownership.
Yes.
So the way Land Department, from my understanding, refer to joint ownership is communities or buildings that are owned by multiple individuals that own multiple units, meaning an apartment building with 100 apartments. Each is 100 owners of the apartment, and that entire building is jointly owned by these 100 occupiers. So the law that they have announced is to govern the relationship of all those owners of those 100 apartments with the community for management of the community and the building with the developer, rather than each asset being jointly owned by multiple people.
Okay. So we talk about common areas.
Common area management and so forth. And these rules and regulations are being put into place to provide more transparency and control in the hands of the owners rather than the developers that are building and managing these buildings, even post handovers.
All right. So I was hoping it was really about tokenization, but unfortunately it's not yet the case as far as we can interpret, because things are very, very new as we look at it. But there must be something positive to say about this joint
No,
ownership.
absolutely. So so I think it hasn't been sort of picked up in the media too much, but I think it's been sort of subsided with the cityscape talk and so forth.
Okay.
But I think this is a massive positive for the market, because it's going to bring more transparency, more control in the hands of the owners, the investors. It's going to bring more confidence into the market, because now investors or owners will be able to better control or have visibility of how the community, the buildings are being managed, the budget, the allocation, where the service charges are going, what you're paying for. And there will be a lot of service charges that I foresee over the next few years. Many of the buildings will start reducing, because RERA is going to start clamping down. We have some properties in our portfolio. We're already starting to get emails from developers that manage these properties saying we're adjusting, they're following the RERA system and so forth. So that's very important, because service charge is a big component of if you're renting.
Yes.
If you own the property, you obviously have a cost service charge that you have to pay. It's a big component. But if you have a property that's a rental property, service charges eat up into your rent. So any reduction or visibility in the service charge would be a big positive.
Okay, so that's very clear, basically, that these, the service charges, basically, which is indeed asked a lot in apartment complexes, might come down in the coming months to years, basically, to come. So that's something definitely very positive to report
Absolutely.
on, that this has been now in a RERA law been put forward and being approved. So we can see definitely some kind of good news coming in into the coming months and years as we speak, because of course it takes always time to adjust towards the new law.
Absolutely.
And taking it forward. Now, looking at what does Smart Crowd do, and as far as my understanding, but we met a couple of times. Smart Crowd is a platform where you are able to purchase basically with a couple of investors a property.
Correct.
And then from there create rental income as things go. So will this new law actually kind of affect the way you do your business?
Not necessarily, no. This law has no implications on our business. Obviously, this law has a big impact on the underlying asset, which is the real estate itself. So that's a big positive for us. But in terms of how we operate, our license or operations,
okay,
not necessarily.
So maybe you can give an example of something which is on the market right now, where people are able to look into being part owner of that. How does that process basically goes on your platform?
So our platform is quite unique in the sense that, so you talk about tokenization, right?
Yes.
So you can think of us off the chain tokenization, right? Okay. Because essentially what we do is we allow people to own have fractional ownership. So what we do is a digital platform where we allow people to own, invest as little as 5,000 dirhams towards a property, and you can have multiple people to a property and collectively own the property and then benefit from any returns generated from that property.
So from 5,000 dirhams, I'm able to be part owner.
Correct.
Into a property, basically, you guys advertise and create rental income from.
Yeah, so we have a very stringent criteria process of vetting the properties that go onto our platform.
Got it.
And if it qualifies, we have our own 100 data point proprietary screening tool that we developed. It's a scoring system. We're very selective in terms of what goes onto our platform. And then individuals or users of our platform come and they have the ability to pick and choose which properties they want to invest in and how much they want to invest in. And then once we get the funding for it, we transact and we buy the property on behalf of those investors, and then they collectively own it and benefit from the returns.
So you really use the power of the crowd to do this, right?
Yeah, so the idea is to give access to this asset class to the masses, right? The wealthy are already investing in real estate, but an average Joe finds it very difficult to get on the property ladder for various reasons, right? One, because of it's an extensive capital requirement to buy real estate, and for many that even can afford it, becomes a very concentrated piece of their investment portfolio, where it's 70-80% of their portfolio turns into one real estate asset, and worst case scenario could be a leveraged asset. So by fractionalizing it, what we do is we allow people to have appropriate allocation to direct real estate. So for example, anyone that has say $50,000, $100,000 investable capital, they can either dream of investing into real estate, direct real estate particularly. So our platform like ours allows them to have a proper allocation of like say 20% in real estate, and then they still have money left over to go invest in stocks and bonds and build a proper investment portfolio.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very powerful platform in that matter. As far as I understood right now, you're having properties here in Dubai, but you're also looking at properties in other cities around the world.
Yeah, so right now, we're the first ones to get a regulatory approval. We're here based in the DIFC, regulated by the DFSA. And we've been in the sandbox environment, and we've been restricted per that regulations to do only Dubai properties, but very soon we'll be making some announcements. Stay tuned, a matter of days, where we'll be able to open up the platform to non-UAE residents and as well as have non-Dubai properties onto the platform.
Fantastic, because I mean the real juice is basically in scaling this up.
Absolutely, and the beauty of real estate is borderless. Everybody wants to invest in real estate, and real estate is there all over the world. And we have effectively made it as simple as you go into this thing, 5 clicks, and you're a property owner.
That's really awesome.
It is. It's fantastic.
And I really like the fact that you guys, gone through the proper process to doing it. I mean, the legalities are obviously quite difficult to...
A few gray hairs to show for it, and a lot of bald patches to prove.
So we're matching that better.
Fantastic. I'm just better looking. Just kidding. No, never. You're more suited and booted than I am. This is ugly red shirt, but I wasn't prepared for the video. I thought I was just doing a voiceover podcast, but that's all right.
No worries, mate.
Hopefully my words will make up for how I look.
Sure, definitely. I mean, I'm really excited about that this model is now working very well, and you're able to go into phase 2, I would like to call it, in scaling it up as a worldwide kind of platform.
Absolutely.
To do so, because there it is, and as far as I understood also, right? I mean, to have this criteria, it takes a lot of work to do so.
It wasn't easy. It took us a long time. We're still at it, right? But it's and we've done it in probably one of the most challenging real estate markets that Dubai has seen over its life. So we're quite, the team is quite proud of what we've achieved, and the road is just full of opportunities ahead of us.
All right. So I cannot leave you without asking that, do you see in the near future, if this law really, as you explained about joint ownership, is not about tokenization, do you see a possibility that the government will come out with laws which will create the possibility for tokenization of real estate assets?
So I think we'll eventually get there. So I can speak from my experience, right? So we're obviously very involved with the stakeholders, right? So we were in constant conversation with the land department, the Dubai Land Department, because we were the first ones to do this. We're in constant engagement with them in terms of how we're structuring these things. We signed an MOU with the Abu Dhabi Department of Planning as well, too, municipality, to help them introduce this crowdfunding, joint ownership, fractional ownership concept into the capital of the country as well, too. Central bank has been looking at this for some time as well, too. So I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when there will be rules and regulations that will allow for collective fractional ownership. And I think the rules and regulations will be there in terms of what mechanics underline that, whether it's a tokenization blockchain or a more traditional way of doing things and just digitizing what we have done.
Yeah.
Well, time will tell. To be honest, when we started our journey, initially we had started off with blockchain as the underlying core. And we quickly realized the infrastructure wasn't there to fully take advantage of it. So we quickly pivoted and said, okay, let's just use what existing legalities there are and just digitize that experience from a user experience where they can effectively, with a simple click, own a piece of property.
Fantastic. I mean, I think our journeys in that matter match a lot when it comes to this part of, looking at what is there and then really seeing that, okay, how can we make it still work without, being regulated as it is. So I really commend you for that, being in the forefront of this and actually, doing what you have told basically to do. So I'm very proud of you that you're able to do that. So the last thing I would like to ask you is about basically return on investment.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, real estate, as we know, can be at times giving good or lesser real returns basically on our investment. But at the same time, if you look at having a portfolio where you are diversifying your risk, it gives you also the possibility diversifying into a different kind of asset. It gives you less risk basically to go forward. Is there anything, looking at the properties which are right now, you can say, sold, up and running, what kind of returns can you expect basically when somebody puts in, for example, 10,000 dirhams?
Yeah, so there's two things that you need to look at from a return perspective, right? One is your actual yield that you're getting on an annual basis from renting the apartment.
Got it.
Right, and that can vary from year to year depending on renewal of lease, changes to the service charges, maintenance costs, and so forth, right?
Got it.
So that's a key component to look at, and that's one of the key reasons why real estate is a very attractive asset class, because it provides you a steady flow of income, and that essentially holds an intrinsic value to the asset that protects your investments over a long period of time. You're getting paid while you wait for the property prices to correct themselves or get to a point in a cycle where you probably want to exit at a profit and make money. And that's the beauty of this asset class, where it provides you two kinds of returns. The kind of I'm talking about where cash generated, absolutely, and then it's a capital appreciation where over periods of time, if you look at history, it's effectively true for all asset classes that they get inflated over a period of time. Right? The beauty of real estate is you get paid while you wait for that that price acceleration to happen. There will be cycles. in the process, but you can never time these things. So what we focus on, buy quality assets that are providing you good income that are serviceable, meaning they're easy to rent, easy to sell, regardless of the market situation. So at least you're getting a return in your pocket while you're waiting for the price correction to take its place, and eventually sell at a profit in the future. Whatever happens in the near term, it's a paper loss. As long as you don't sell that property at a loss, you don't realize that loss. It's just a paper loss. You're still rented it. You're still earning an income on it. You should be happy and wait and be patient. The challenge is when people buy properties, they have put so much money, so much of their money into that one asset that when prices dip or rents come down, they panic because all their money is in that one asset. And we're emotional, irrational people.
Absolutely.
We're like, might as well get out while we can and get whatever we can, instead of, hey, let's be patient. And having platforms like Smart Crowd or other similar platforms where you can spread your risk by investing with other people, you can afford to be more patient with your capital. Correct. In fact, you can take advantage when markets are down. That's what the wealthy do. The wealthy don't sell in these markets. They come looking for opportunities from people like you and me, an average Joe, who's desperate, trying to get out, and they're like, come and lowball them, buy it, and then wait for the prices to come back and sell it to the same people who get excited, hey, prices are going up, time to buy.
Got it.
Right? So what we try to do is we try to give average person the purchasing power in a down market to get their money to work for them.
Absolutely. And I think I started investing into real estate when I read Robert Kiyosaki's book.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Everyone should read that book.
And I then understood that how this cash flow generating model basically worked. And, try to create a small portfolio of real estate 100%. Myself.
I'm a big believer, and I'm probably going to get your fans or followers are going to ridicule me for this. I'm in the camp that believes that you should never buy a home to live in, right? If you have the money to buy a home to live in, I would rather buy an investment property, use the returns to subsidize the rent where I want to live in. Because when you buy a property to live in, you don't have an asset, you have a massive liability on your hand because you're paying to live in that house and it's not generating any income. Buy an investment property, it will probably give you a better return over a long period of time. Use the rental income that's coming from there to subsidize your rent. You are not wasting your money in rent. That's one of the worst things that brokers and people will tell you, because obviously they're incentivized to sell you a property.
Of course.
They will tell you this, oh, you're wasting money on rent. You're not. There's something called opportunity cost, right? For you to buy a home, you got to put a massive down payment, right? You got to take a massive liability. It takes away flexibility. Whatever, you lose your job, you leave country, you're stuck. Right? That opportunity cost sometimes is priceless.
Yes.
Right? So if you can take that money and put it into investment properties, generate income, and subsidize your rent, leaving you flexibility, optionality, that is priceless. You know what? It gives you peace of mind and freedom.
Absolutely. I think a very wise lesson you've told us, basically, because living in your own home is not an asset, but it's actually a liability because it costs money. At this point of time, I am renting.
Yeah, good.
But more importantly, maybe, in future, of course, it's like a home is a home. And if you have the means to do it, perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
But looking as an investor into investments, absolutely, real estate.
You should not buy a home that you're living in. You should not see that as an investment. If you're buying a home that you see yourself living forever, then it's an emotional decision. Then the investments don't make sense. True. Then for that, go ahead, buy the perfect home that you feel like you're gonna grow in and die in. Right? That's fine. But if the moment you start thinking, oh, this is gonna be a good investment, I'm gonna be in Dubai for 10 years, I'm gonna buy something as an investment, bad idea. Because the products, investment real estate is very different from an end user real estate product, right? In a place that you would want to live, or you want your family to grow in, will be very different from a place that you want to buy just to rent out, right? Because the demographics are different, right?
Go ahead.
To give you an example, in this market, the properties that provide the best rental returns are studio 1-bedrooms, and not your typical studio and 1-bedrooms. These are like small studio 1-bedrooms because service charges are small on that. You can rent it. If it's a 350 square foot studio apartment or a 500 square foot apartment next to each other in the same building, their studio apartments they're renting for the same amount. But guess what?
Wow.
Your 350 square foot apartment is giving less in service charges, so your net return is higher than the 500 dirham square foot. But let me ask you a question. Which one would you prefer to live in? The bigger apartment, because you want space, right? So if you have a family, you're not going to live in these cubby studio 1-bedroom apartments, right? You would want to get yourself a nice 2-3 bedroom apartment or a home.
Absolutely.
And the cost of maintenance of that is ridiculous, right? So even if you decide, okay, I don't want to live in it, I'll rent it out, fine, you'll rent it out, but you won't make as much return as you would make on that small studio, right? So I'd rather you, instead of putting a down payment on a 3-bedroom home, go buy 2-3 of these studios, make money from it, and subsidize your rent. And you can, you know what? You can move every year, get to a newer place, and the best of all, when the rents drop, you can take advantage of lower rents. Because if you had bought a property, you're stuck paying the same mortgage, right?
Yes.
Whereas everyone else is paying less rent now, but you're paying the same mortgage.
Got it. Beautifully said. Siddiq, I really want to thank you for coming down to our office and to talk about this, because everybody was really, I was getting phone calls and WhatsApp that, hey, is this the tokenization law? Is this really now actual? But unfortunately, most probably it isn't. But thank you for putting your views on it and
More than happy
getting us insights what is happening. Most probably, when there is again something happening in the real estate market, I'll have you over to talk more about it.
If you agree or disagree with what I have to say, you can shoot me an email. You can write me an email at info@smartcrowd.ae, or you can check us out at www.smartcrowd.ae.
All right, Siddiq, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I wish you all the best, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.